What's up, podcast listeners? We have another episode of the What's Right podcast out this week with Taylor Schatz. Taylor is a friend of mine, training partner from Fargo BJJ, and we were doing pummel drill the other day, and I kind of found out he's a jack of all trades or an all-round warrior when it comes to martial arts. Has a passion for learning all about the different varieties, has been a fighter in the past, and is really into the arts. So I really wanted to have him on the podcast, learn that there's much more to him, and we did not get to everything that is Taylor Schatz. And so I look forward to having him on again. But you guys check out this episode. I know you're going to love it. Go to the end of the episode on YouTube if you want to see what the shirts look like that just came in. But if you like the episode as much as I enjoyed recording it with Taylor, give it a share on Instagram, whatever social media. I appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the podcast. And Taylor, thank you so much for coming on. I just go to the gym to lift.
Right. No, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a couple of friends that are in CrossFit as well. So yeah, it's a great program. They do a great job.
Absolutely. And it all depends on the gym you go to.
Oh,
and
100%.
what the management is, just like any other gym.
100%.
What the management is just shooting for. And we have a new owner, and she's making a lot of strides to help improve
Awesome.
the gym. And the original owner just doesn't have the time. And so she brought her on as a partner, and it's been going really well.
Yeah.
But, so who are you?
Who am I?
Where are you from?
Good question. Taylor Schatz. I'm from kind of all over North Dakota, but have spent some time living in other places around the continental United States. But I suppose for the vast majority of my adult life, have spent most of that time in Fargo, North Dakota.
Okay. So did you grow up in like early years in Fargo?
Earlier years, I grew up sort of in, born in Bismarck.
Okay.
North Dakota, and then family moved to, or my mother moved to Grand Forks for work. She was a part of the National Guard.
Oh, okay.
And so she moved up to Grand Forks, and then we followed her. And Dad was back in Bismarck. They got separated when I was like 4 or 5, and then spent the vast majority of my elementary school years in Grand Forks. There was like a hot second where my mom was almost going to be posted in Australia. So there was like a hot second where I could have been Australian.
That could have been a while.
Man, I was just like, Mom, why didn't you take it? And I get it. She wanted to, raising my brother and I, she wanted to keep us close to our extended family as well too, and not like feel like she was pulling us away from them. And, that was a big motivator, I know. But it would have been like a pay increase. We would have lived in Australia. I probably would have a really cool accent, But that wasn't to be, at least not for the time. But yeah, so that was up until the elementary years, and then when I went to middle school and high school, mother got remarried. And retired from the National Guard, and her husband, Rod, my stepfather, moved or got reposted back in Bismarck.
Okay.
So instead of moving proper to Bismarck, we moved to a tiny town about 45 miles southeast, because they're smaller town people in general, and I think they wanted to get back to that sort of
Makes sense.
living with space type of thing.
Yeah.
So I had for my junior high and high school years, I had 3 acres to play with.
Oh, right.
Space. It was nice, in a lot of ways. But it was interesting, again, sort of going from a city boy to small town boy. I understand sort of both systems, and at the time I really wanted to, obviously moving from like my friends and stuff, I wanted to be in that city environment, but ended up being in a very small town environment.
What were the early years like? What were you doing for fun in Grand Forks, or like what were your
Oh man,
your days like?
my days were, oh gosh, they were so obviously there was school. It's funny, I don't remember a lot about school. I've got a few
Yeah.
like memories, but nothing that really sticks as far as like, you go to school, you learn stuff, you sit in the same desks, you go home. So it's not really a lot of memories
No.
there, with the exception of I was always kind of a bigger kid.
Okay.
So sometimes I wouldn't know my own strength, and I was either playing too hard with somebody, or somebody got hurt, or so I was in the principal's office every year, pretty much for one reason or the other. But I really tried to not be.
Yeah.
Especially from third grade on. Those first couple years were were formative years for me. But luckily I had some really good teachers that led me on the nicer path, but or more careful path, I should say.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But outside of school itself, outside of elementary school, I remember riding my bike around town like everywhere. I wouldn't go as far to say I was a latchkey kid, but very close to. My mother was taking care of my brother and I sort of toward the tail end, but she was still working in the National Guard until she stepped out of that position just to take care of my brother and myself, and be sort of a stay-at-home mom, while my stepfather ended up working. But during sort of that transition that was going on, it's not like mom was home a lot. And I know we had keys to our house, but every once in a while, like mom would be home or something like that. So it's not like a full latchkey experience.
Yeah.
But sort of like I was almost a half generation removed from that experience from the 1980s.
Where you're just like able to kind of just go off and do whatever.
Yeah, no, truly. And I even remember that, and I got in trouble a few times, but I remember as long as I just told my mom where I was going, it was fine. And so I would ride my bike all around our trailer court, or there's a ballpark right next to it, and so is the high school. And I used to ride my bike to a mini mart, and I was huge into comic books. I just loved comics.
Yeah.
Still do, but I remember it was like a real drive for me. Like, oh gosh, yeah, riding my bike down to the mini mart, and picking up the latest Batman comics. The big storyline at the time was Nightfall, where Batman got his back broke by Bane, and so he had to find a replacement Batman.
Okay.
And so Bruce Wayne wasn't Batman for a little bit. It was, and I forget his name, Jean Paul or Jean Luc or some French-ish name. And all my my nerd rage is coming out right now. I was like, why can't I remember his name? And so they tried a different sort of Batman thing, and it was like in the early 90s they were trying to sort of reinvent pretty much every superhero. They were partly they were competing with Marvel, but at the same time they were competing with themselves, and they were trying to come out with like new material. So Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, like completely like went away, and this whole Green Lantern Corps, which was this space police force, and I was a huge Green Lantern fan too, turned into just one guy. It was they took away the entire police force and just gave all the power to this one guy. And Hal Jordan was like, because it's like, I think they were thinking kids couldn't identify with him because Hal Jordan was this fighter pilot. And what do kids want to be when they grow up? I want to be a fighter pilot.
Yeah.
Well, 90s, it's like more kids like wanted to be artists and things like that.
Okay.
And that was me too. And so they gave the mantle to the character Kyle Rayner. And he was an artist. And so, I mean, when you think about a power ring, an amulet that brings some sort of power, that's based upon your will and your ability to overcome fear and your imagination. I mean, gosh, why wouldn't an artist be on the top of that? a fighter pilot where you make a big boxing glove and like punch somebody. Oh, that's okay. That's creative. but yeah. So they changed like that whole dynamic. They changed the Flash from Barry Allen to Wally West. Killed off Barry Allen. They broke Batman's back. No more Bruce Wayne. Brought in a different. So it was a complete shakeup amongst like the entire DC universe. And I was more of a DC fan than I was a Marvel fan.
Okay.
But yeah. So being a kid, I remember I was really into
comic
books.
Hell yeah.
Video games, and theater and acting, performing. I really enjoyed.
When did you start doing that?
Oh gosh, elementary school.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember I was always I was a bit, I wouldn't say like 100% class clown. I mean, I had my moments, but I would sort of choose my moments. And I learned that when I was really, really young, too, because again, being a larger kid and not being able to identify with all these other kids that are around me and sort of at least at that part, I could have very easily turned into a bully, very easily. And again, with the good guidance of my mother and my teachers at that time and the principal at that time, it really goes to show that with help from certain individuals, they can turn a kid around or point the kid in the right direction.
Did you ever have so you say you easily could have been a bully,
Yeah.
but did you have malicious intent?
No,
At all?
no. It more came from a feeling of wanting to be a part of something, but nobody would let me be a part of it. So I was more sad about it than anything, and that's what upset me more than anything. I was really a marshmallow when it came down to it. I look very intimidating. I look very or I can look very abrasive, especially when I get my focus face on. And some people just think it's RBF, and I get that. It's I sort of had that face. But I mean, even like when I first started coming back to jiu-jitsu here, and it was a completely new set of crew, and I'd taken a couple of years off just because of work-related reasons, just life reasons. Just couldn't. I literally could not put the time didn't work.
Yeah.
No matter what I would try to do. But when I came back and it was a whole new crew of white belts and stuff like that, which is great. It's like, oh, this is awesome. Okay, cool. But first couple times, people just don't know how to take me because they'll see me like with my hat off or whatever, and I look pretty intimidating, shaved bald head and the big beard, and then I, after we got done, doing fundamentals or drilling, would go back to the changing room and put stuff on, and then the guy, I forget who, looked at me and said, "Oh, you don't look as malicious or intimidating with your clothes on." I was like, "Yeah, it's a bit of a camouflage." So
there you go.
Yeah, it's another reason why it's like I wear this hat quite a bit. I think it takes the pressure off from the intimidation factor from people whom have never met me before.
Yeah.
But once they do, they realize, oh, he's cool, he's chill.
Have you thought that your whole life, that you're more of an intimidating figure?
I was aware of that.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes it would frustrate me because, again, I just wanted to be to a certain extent, I think we all want to be liked. We all want to be loved.
Yeah. Sure.
We all want to be accepted. And when you're going through the emotions of that and the rigors of that are just growing up in the midst of it, while you're discovering yourself, while you're learning in school, while you're learning how to interact with one another, it can be a completely frustrating experience in time, and everyone else is going through that too, and kids can be cruel,
for sure,
and again, a lot of it's just because they're discovering themselves in the process. One of my first okay, so here's a memory from elementary school.
Okay.
And this sort of goes back to how kids are cruel. So it was Valentine's Day, and since 'tis the season, it's coming up here really soon. It was Valentine's Day, and what did they do inside Valentine's Day? It was first grade, And I'm sure they still do this to some extent. I know not everything's on tablets for kids.
Yeah.
But so we all made our Valentine's Day boxes, and usually what they are just like Kleenex boxes.
Yeah.
And then we
Decorate them.
decorate them up, right? And then and again, you have to go out and buy your own Valentines and stuff like that. But then you put the Valentines together, and then you put them in everyone's box. And this is up in Grand Forks, so I mean, we had a class of 18 to 20 kids, at least four sets of groups of teachers. I only had one teacher per grade. So my first grade was Mrs. Ramage, but there were three other teachers that had three other, so like 24 to 60, at least 80 kids for that grade.
Yeah.
But I only saw like the 20 every day for the most part. And you see the others during recess and stuff like that. But in that setting of 20, we all had to, give Valentines out to everybody because, you don't want to be a jerk or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I remember I wrote them out even to like the people that were not pleasant to me, because it's like, it was one of those things where it's like, you want to be nice. And but I remember this one little girl, Tiffany, who had just a thing for just not liking me for whatever reason. Maybe I'm sure an annoying little kid as well too. But this was just shocked and surprised me. And we put our Valentines in everyone's boxes, right? And then at the very end of the day or whatever, we go through the Valentines. And so, and I was going through them, and usually they were little folded up pieces of card with like a sucker or something that was attached to them. But I got to Tiffany's and opened it up, and then inside it said, "I think you're a dick, Tiffany."
And what year was this?
It's first grade.
What?
Yeah, right.
What?
Like, you're a dick. And then I just remember feeling so just upset and sad by that. Like I knew that was like an insult too.
Yeah.
I just knew how mean that was. And again, first grade. Oh my gosh!
First grade, that word rattled you probably.
Oh yeah, it's funny too, because I guess I had the tendency when I was younger as well too, to be very honest with teachers. So, and I learned as well that that's considered tattling. And so I like really early on, got a reputation, quote unquote reputation, for being a tattler. Yeah. And so tattletale or tattletailer. And it was like, oh, I don't like that. So then I stopped really tattling on people. And I think that's why when I got that Valentine from Tiffany and said, "You're a dick," and I didn't go to my teacher with it. Like, it was just like, well, this sucks. And I think I told my mother about it, and she was upset. So I'm gonna go in, and I was like, don't do that. Don't go in. It's whatever. She's just a little mean kid for right now, and she's just a kid.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, even thinking about it at the time, it's like, yeah, it's very cruel, but she's just a kid. And it's the mean streets of Grand Forks. I'm very fortunate for the education that I had and the upbringing that I had. I'm not poo-pooing it like that. But yeah, there were some instances in elementary school where I look back and it's like, yeah, that really happened. Another time playing like touch tag ball or touch football on the snowy ground outside the elementary walls and for recess. And we would always, but they would always like it would turn into like tackle, you know. We play against everybody, and some of those kids were super, and I was always athletic too, but some of those kids were super athletic and very competitive, as was I. But I also this gal, Kelly, Wonder if I should say her last name. She was, and again, you sort of find out some things about these people later that it's like, okay, it sort of makes sense why you had an abrasive attitude towards individuals, maybe myself. And also, again, I was a bigger kid. So in some senses, that got me some favors as far as like, people wouldn't mess with me, but some people still would. And like I would always wear like this warm flannel or whatever when we were playing football, and then they gave me the ball and I ran it. And like in football, I'm not a running back. I'm more of a front lineman. So I'll block you, but I'm not a runner for the ball. But whatever, I'll run the ball. I want, because everyone wants to run the ball a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I did, and they would try to be mean about taking you down. So they grab clothes and pull and just a lot of stuff that we do in jiu-jitsu now.
Yeah.
But they grab and pull, and I would always have this bigger flannel jacket on. So they start pulling on one sleeve, I'd slip out. They pull out the other sleeve, slip out, and then run a touchdown. Woo! And then Kelly would insult me by calling me a fat F word. And this is like third grade.
That's crazy.
Isn't that nuts? Just to sort of think about it, but
absolutely. Like kids are so. Like I did undergrad for education.
Okay.
And you go into these classes, and I always sit in the back and I observe.
Yeah.
Until you actually student teachers. Sometimes you'll teach a lesson every now and then,
right.
But a lot of your time in the classroom while you're an undergrad is observing, and
yes.
you just watch attitudes, and they'll forget you're there, and they'll start like talking shit to each other, or it's like, oh my god, you're in sixth grade or whatever,
Yeah.
It's like kids are so mean.
Yeah.
And even like our friend, his daughter's was been getting bullied by this kid. It's like, why are kids so mean at that age?
Yeah.
Or all the way up to their in high school. Like, I think you just don't realize that there's like social structures outside of the school.
100%. Yeah. And especially at the time when you're in the thick of it and you're a part of it, you don't think about, what's the social status of this individual? Where do they live? Do they have food on the table? What's going on with their family life? All those things. And those are things especially that are hard to talk about as well. And so, I don't hold any animosity or towards those individuals and stuff like that. Again, we're just stupid kids. And as far as like the worst things that could happen to an individual, somebody swearing at me or calling me a dirty name, it's not that bad.
For sure.
I'm okay compared to I'm sure what other people have gone through. So I try to keep that in perspective as much as I can, right? It's like, not that it all has to be like that. I mean, yeah, it sucks that people are starving in the world somewhere, but I shouldn't feel bad about eating this, cheeseburger because of it.
Yeah.
Which I think some people try to, and it's like, no, you don't have to really equate the two. It's like they can both exist.
Exactly.
But
so
sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. So you leave Grand Forks, move to Bismarck. You're in
Bismarck area,
middle school.
Yeah, 45 miles southeast.
South of Bismarck.
Mm-hmm.
How does your life change, and like, what is school like for you coming into a new environment?
Oh man, that's a good one. So, I was again, I was torn about moving to where we were moving to because, I had my friends back in Grand Forks, and who wants to miss that out, but at the same time miss out on that. But at the same time, I knew this was an opportunity for sort of a new beginning type of thing, where potentially kids wouldn't have that prior notion of myself and predisposition to judge me in a specific way because they've known me since I was at the first grade.
True.
So I really tried to go in with that expectation. And also back in elementary school, I knew that I was good at I was athletic, but the sport that I probably fell into the most was football, and we didn't have a lot of, we had intramurals for 5th and 6th grade, but nothing like you really start playing football when you're in middle school.
Yeah.
Elementary school is not, but I was, playing football since 5th and 6th grade, and, trying to figure that sport out. But also I was huge into, music. Those were my favorite classes, was music and art.
Okay.
Whether it be choir, I never got into band, not that I didn't want to, but it was just, you had to afford your own instrument, and we weren't, we were lower middle class, so couldn't really afford, instruments and things like that. And I don't want to blame it on that, but that's like one of the reasons why I didn't really continue with playing an instrument, at least at the time.
Yeah.
But in choir all the time, I was always really good about reading music. I was always really good about projecting. Same thing with whenever we would have a talent show or a play, I would always be like the first one picked to do the more difficult or lengthy roles.
Okay.
So I knew I excelled in that, and at the same time, I knew that I enjoyed making people laugh and engaging with people in that way, performing for them.
Yeah.
So when I moved to little tiny town 45 miles southeast of Bismarck, Moffat, we had to travel 15 miles more south to go to high school in Hazleton.
Okay.
And then I got involved with again, the things that I excelled most in were choir and theater. But these people have no exposure to me before that, so I had to sort of, I don't want to say prove myself, but just by existing, it's like showing that I was interested in theater, showing that I was interested in music, and obviously I was one of the better choir singers. I goofed around a bit, but I was also very confident in my abilities. Not to say that I didn't try to always do better or be better.
Yeah.
But the things that I excelled in middle school and high school were very, in some ways, contradictory to one another, because one was football, and the other ones were music and art. Like those, Mrs. Bailey, my art teacher, one of the best. I mean, she would she's the type of teacher that would, give you as much rope as you needed, and then if she needed to pull you back a little bit, she would pull you back a little bit. Nice. Instead of sort of giving you like a box to work and you have to do this. Yeah. And same thing with my choir teacher, Mrs. McCormick. And she was just, again, just a really good source of a person to go to. Two of my favorite teachers. And the things that I always seem to excel in are things that are not necessarily academically based.
Okay, yeah.
But again, the two contradictory things were football and choir and theater. And because the two really didn't mix. I mean, maybe they do somewhere, and there are exceptions to the rule, but the individuals that I saw in choir and theater were not the same individuals that I saw in football or the weight room. And so much so that they'd, again, kids being cruel, they'll tease you for doing something just because it's not what they think is in the realm of what you should be doing. Based on, you're a football player, you shouldn't be in choir. What are you doing being in choir? Or, oh, you're good at art. Okay, sure. It's like, no, really, I am.
So, being like into art and having the creative side, but also being into comics, were you ever thinking like, hey, I want to make my own comics? Or
yes.
Drawing stuff of that style?
Yes. I was always doodling, and I was always drawing as well too. When I was younger, I would I would draw a few of my own comic books, and it really also gave me just a vast appreciation for those artists in general, for the amount of artwork that they have to pump out in a short amount of time.
A lot, yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, and I love that. That's in a lot of ways I attribute my vocabulary and my ability, as far as my reading ability, to comic books that I read.
Yeah.
And I read a lot of comic books. I read a lot of books, but I read a lot of comic books. That's what got me interested in reading, actually, were comics.
Oh, okay.
Like reading was always like just sort of it seemed like a task or a boring task that I was made to do because it was an assignment. And from that, I would never really engage with the literature that I was reading.
Yeah.
Since then, I've found a way to connect with that, and it was through comics initially that got me there. But yeah, I would draw my own characters. I would do parodies of characters that were existing. Used to draw Batman a lot. Used to draw Green Lantern a lot. I liked the idea, especially with Green Lantern. I think what connected with me was the ability to be able to create something out of nothing. And just your imagination.
Yeah.
Like, and your only limit is your imagination. Like, oh my gosh, that's, in some ways limitless. And I was like, oh, I really, really enjoyed that. Yeah. And same thing, even in art classes in high school, I really excelled. I always tried to make things look, awesome. I don't know what that's not that to say that other kids don't.
Yeah.
But mine would always come out, I felt, better than the rest of the students. That's not to disparage their work or the time and stuff that they put into it. And obviously some people excelled better than I did in some different crafts or some different art forms. But I noticed, you know how when you see people sort of light up a little bit when they, either look at or associate something that you did.
Yeah.
And I think I got that at an early age too, when it was associated with music and or drawing art and or football. That seemed to light people up, and I was able to make them engage in a way that they weren't with some other football players or some other people who sang in choir.
It made you feel like you kind of found your thing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And thinking about it in retrospect, it was definitely a driving force. I think I had a lot of positive response from that. And not even like, I mean, obviously your teacher's always going to try to be positive towards you, but it wasn't just the teachers.
Yeah.
Right, you'd think.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're, but yeah, so those are the things that I seem to excel at and I enjoy doing the most. And it's funny too, with the exception of football, a lot of the things that I would enjoy are very solitary activities, especially when you practice. If you work on your vocals or if you play an instrument, or if you write, or if you draw, or if you read, or if you exercise, all those things are very solitary experiences, especially when you have to make it to that next level, or when you have to push yourself to that next level.
So what did it? I'm assuming you were going kind of above and beyond art class and your choir class, your
I would always get A's
what
in those.
Was were you doing like extra things outside of it, like creating your own art or
Yeah, I would try. I've got like art books at home that I would like draw and sketch in. I started playing guitar, or learning to play guitar sort of in my junior year in high school.
Okay.
And a lot was self-taught, and we didn't have sources like YouTube and things like that to look at, where it was a lot easier to sort of source material.
For sure.
So I would have to either learn from other individuals that I knew how to play, or from books. Okay. And so I got to learn to read tabs really well. And I can sight read, I can vocally sight read music, but I can't sight read music to play on guitar.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I never took that leap. That would be like an accomplishment that I would love to do. And so
Are you still playing now?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do, and that's sort of what I was going into was I started writing, and I would write poetry and stuff too when I was younger. But I started writing songs, sort of. Well, I suppose. Yeah, I started my first attempts at writing songs in my junior and senior year in high school when I was learning how to play guitar, because we would have these sort of study periods or free periods, whatever you want to call it, in high school. And whenever I had a free period, I'd just go over to the choir room and I'd just play guitar for an hour.
Okay.
Or I'd go to the art room and I would, work on some art thing like that. Whenever I had like a free moment, and obviously if I had homework to do or something like that, I'd try to hit that first. Maybe I wouldn't sometimes too.
Yeah.
but that's where I would always go to. So it was yeah, and then but I started tinkering around with writing lyrics to music, and then singing lyrics, and then singing and then learning to play, and then singing and playing at the same time, and then singing my own stuff and playing. It was just like it's a sort of a lot to try to multitask and do. But I was really trying to challenge myself, and a lot of the music, I started writing more thoroughly when I got to university. And I've written, gosh, at least a couple dozen songs, here and there. And we can get to that in a second. But yeah, as far as like high school is concerned, yeah, I think I found my place within the athletics and the football and the arts, music, theater.
What was we talked a lot about like kind of your art side, your writing side, your singing side, or vocal side maybe.
Performance. I did.
But what was like athletics like for you? Where you mentioned the weight room at one point and lifting, but what did that side look like?
So again, very competitive. I knew that from a very young age as well too. Even playing board games with my parents or my brothers or whatever, I would always want to win. Yeah. Which to an extent, who doesn't?
Exactly.
Yeah. but and even if and also I think I learned young as well too. It's like, so if I found that I couldn't win, I would find that I would do anything to win. So in which case, at the very beginning, I would cheat to win. And then that got sort of worked out of me after I got caught too many times, and then I sort of saw the value in winning without cheating.
Yeah.
And the ability to it felt way better and more honest. And so then I stopped the whole, well, okay, I don't really need to cheat to win. I just have to be better about what happens if I lose. Okay? Like I have to, and that's the toughest part. Nobody wants to lose, but if you can frame your mindset in the way of losing is a learning experience. It's a lesson learned. Yeah. It's okay, what can I do better next time? And I think I had those things instilled within me sort of around that middle school age. Athletics, playing football. So I played for Linton, which is a town 15 miles south of Hazleton, and so football season. I mean, I'd be up by 6 a.m. to get on the bus before we get to school, before school starts at, whatever it was, 7 a.m., something like that. And then as soon as like school got done at 3 or 3:15, I think it was eventually 3:15, I had to get on a bus by 3 o'clock so that we could travel with the 8 other kids that were going down to Linton, to go practice with them, get there by 3:15, 3:20, get my gear on, jump in another bus from 3:30 where they took us out to this baseball diamond park that was just on the outside of town, of Linton, of the town proper, because we didn't do a lot of practicing on the actual field that we would play on. So, and we'd go out to that baseball diamond field that had this hill that was like a little bit more than 45 degrees, probably about 50 degrees, and probably about 20, 40, 24, maybe 40 yards, 30 yards, 10, 20, maybe 30 yards. 30 yards, and you'd have to run up, and I was always turned into things like, how many hills are we getting today? Okay, 3 hills. So you'd have to run up this 50-degree hill for about 30 yards, then run back down the side, and run back up, run back down the side, run back up, run back down the side. Yeah, it was great conditioning. At the time it just felt like torture.
For sure.
And the more I know about exercise science now, it's really beneficial. And I wish I would have had the connection to understanding the benefit of it back then, because it just seemed like a punishment more than something that was helping us.
I always wonder, like, a lot of my time in my life I've spent on athletics, and then education has been like the two sides of my brain. Mm-hmm. And I always wonder how can you teach athletes in high school that this is going to do this for your body, and so that's why we're doing these sprints at the end of practice, or conditioning, or gassers as we call them, and that it's going to lead you to here, right? Because everybody knows that exercise makes you more fit, but specifically, how do we help kids learn that to push themselves harder?
Honestly, I think that's partly why we incorporate them into sport, and then we do things. We gauge things by a barometer, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to time you now. Yeah. And then we're going to base it off that time. Okay, you did this exercise in 30 seconds last week. Let's try to get it down to 29 seconds, and then you get it to 28, and then so it's a good way to visualize for students, and even like people that are getting into training nowadays, for them to visualize their gains. Yeah. But you just at the time you can't do that, because you're going through what how many hours in the school day?
Like 8.
Yeah, you're going through 8 hours.
7,
right?
Like
7, 8 hours of school, anywhere between 6 to 8 hours of school, depending upon your program, whatever your school's doing. And then you go into an after-school sport activity right after, and you got to pack your own like foods and stuff like that. Otherwise, your butt's gonna be dragging. You know. And you I think you learn that mistake once or twice, and it's like, okay, I got to bring myself a banana next time. But yeah, so like in my current iteration of myself, the level that I've grown into now, I work with a lot of younger students, or a lot of younger athletes, and I try to, as much as I can, overemphasize why we're doing what we're doing, and I'll have them write down specific, repetition for a drill or whatever we're doing. Yeah. And then we'll do it next week, and they'll be like, oh, this is easier now. It's like, yes, because you activated those muscles that you don't normally do. And it's like, hey, you were right. And it's like, I know. I mean,
there's a reason behind it.
Right. There's like, I'm not just doing, and I'll even explain to them, it's like, I'm not just doing this to torture you guys. Yeah. Like, it's not why that doesn't help me. That doesn't help you. This will help build, your stamina, your endurance, specific muscles inside your body that you don't activate or use. Yeah. A lot of people don't. I would say the vast majority of individuals out there, especially people that live, sedentary lifestyles, whether it be they work in an office or whatever it may be, you don't do compound movements. You don't activate your stabilizer muscles just by existing. You don't. Yeah. You have to move your body in specific pathways, and contract in specific ways for them to actually fire, for them to engage. And it's not like the vanity muscles that we have. It's not like your long head, short head of your bicep. It's not like they are stabilizer muscles that are deep inside there, and then you're not going to hit them if you only exercise in a specific way.
Yeah.
And again, sometimes I do the spaghetti at the wall treatment where it's like something's going to stick. I'm just going to keep telling you guys the same stuff. And a lot of times I just say the same stuff over and over and over again.
So who do you train, or what are the kids you're working with right now?
I am one of the instructors and coaches at Northwest Fitness. We do circuit training there, but it originally was born out of a Taekwondo program.
Okay.
And Northwest Taekwondo has been established for, over 30, 40 years here in Fargo. And a lot of Taekwondo that was introduced to North Dakota was through Grandmaster Mu Young Yun, who ended up training kids either out of Kindred or Fargo.
Oh, yeah.
A couple other places as well too. I believe he came from Chicago initially, but back in the 70s and 80s, and those individuals who grew up learning from him ended up either staying with that organization or branching out into their own organizations. So chances are, if you're affiliated somehow with a Taekwondo program in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, there are some ties. There's some ties to that master instructor. It all sort of comes from one of the things that were born out of there.
I'm from Kindred, and I did 3 months, and then and it wasn't the main guy, but it was a younger instructor.
Sure.
He threatened to cut off my tongue.
What?
And as a second grader.
What?
I think it was sarcasm.
Probably, but
as a second grader, I did not realize it was sarcasm. I was like,
he's really gonna cut off my tongue.
This is not for me. Because how I focus, and I get the reason why. I focus by putting my tongue out a little bit.
Oh,
and I was trying to work on this balance thing. It's if you don't put your tongue back in your mouth, I'm gonna cut it off and add it to my collection. And I was,
he was so joking.
Terrified.
He was like, right.
But he was like, it's probably just if you ever get kicked, you don't get your tongue cut off.
That's precisely the reason. I'll talk to my younger students as well too. I teach in Fargo, but I also teach out in Barnesville, Minnesota, and it's about a half-hour drive from here. And again, we're working with kids, especially at that younger of an age. You spend a good amount of time, or at least I try to do my best to engage with them on their level, but not baby them. It's not like that, but it's more like I'll slow down my speech pattern a little bit, just a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'll overly engage with them about why I'm asking them to do something or to not do something. And if a student has, run into that a lot, sometimes they'll kick or whatever, and they'll stick their tongue out.
Yeah.
And, I will remind them for the longest time, hey, keep your tongue inside your mouth. I don't want you to accidentally bite down on it. Instead of the approach of, hey,
sounds a lot better.
I'm gonna cut off your tongue and keep it for my collection. I keep it on a necklace around I was like, what was this, some weird Vietnam stuff with ears around what are you doing, dude? Yeah, no. So but again, knowing that, especially at that age, it's like kids don't know that I'm joking.
For sure.
If I was working with adults, again, depending upon what kind of rapport I would have with them over time, then I would maybe go a little bit more snot-nosed about it and be like, hey, if you keep your tongue out there like that and you bite it and it falls off, I'm just going to put it in my collection. See,
if a little bit older, I would have been like, oh,
okay. Right. But at the time, you don't think about that. You're just there's this big man or woman that's going to cut off my tongue.
And in Taekwondo, unlike Jiu-Jitsu, it's a lot more disciplined. And at least from what I remember, a lot more disciplined and a lot more don't want to say respectful because jiu-jitsu is very respectful.
Right. And I think jiu-jitsu is very disciplined as well. I just think that the discipline that they focus on in Taekwondo is more like formalities and tradition based.
Maybe formality is the right word to say.
Yeah. It's there's a lot more formalities going on in Taekwondo than there are in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Like even just some of like the little things that we count in Korean, or we use a bunch of different Korean terminology. We line up at the beginning of class like we do in Jiu-Jitsu, and we bow in, but we also pay respect to the black belts that are there at the time. So if there are multiple black belts, we'll bow to the head instructor, we'll bow to the other black belts, and then we'll bow to the flag, there's like it's like, okay, what's the order of operations? You bow to the flag first, and then you bow to the master instructors, then you bow to the instructor that's running the class, then you bow to the other black belts that are in the class, and then you go. And then you warm up, and then you go through your drills, whatever.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a lot of formality in there. And I think at like an upper level too, like if you're going to like a conference with a whole bunch of like black belts or coral belts in jiu-jitsu, or even just high rank belts, I think they may do a little bit more formal stuff. But again, going back to the tradition of Brazilian jiu-jitsu coming out of Japanese judo, there are similarities between the two, but Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu it's a Brazilian martial art that came from a Japanese martial art. So there's that I don't know, reverence, if I don't know if that's the right word, that formality changed in the process of the Gracies developing
the culture of Brazil is a lot different than the culture of Japan.
100%.
Yeah.
Similarities, but different.
Yes.
And that's the thing too, whichever, dojo, in Korean, it's called the dojang, whichever dojang, you go into, you should have some understanding, at least for the most part. And if you don't, be humble and be like, hey, I don't know how this works. You show me. Right. And I think that'll go a long way more than anything else.
Yeah.
Even the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and os, that's a very Japanese thing. So there are ties that bring it back to where it sort of originated from, but it became its own thing after a certain amount of time as well too, which is again a wonderful evolution of a martial art and a grappling system. I think that's why I really, really enjoy Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is that it's very mechanical. I mean, you have to know the mechanics of the human body.
Yeah.
If you have an understanding of the human body, the way it bends, the way it doesn't like to bend, what power comes from, and you have a natural ability to that, you're primed for, going to be great at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
If you don't have any sport background or maybe any understanding of mechanics, just body mechanics, I think it might be a little bit more difficult, but it's still not undoable.
No, it's definitely like having a sport background. Coach Ian, I don't know if you know him. He talks about doing certain movements in the discipline of doing lifts a lot. And so me having a more lifting based background, I always like sunk very easily into my mind with those, like with that terminology. So it definitely helps for sure.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And my approach to athletics and martial arts and dance, again, I love to dance. I come from the theater as well, and in my brain, I can connect all of them, and how it makes my body move in a specific way and how I have to engage in another way. Again, whether it be dance or a grappling based system or a striking based system, I can compare it to different things in different styles, and that helps me as an educator, as an instructor, as a teacher, relate to a student who maybe doesn't have a background in any striking form,
Yeah.
or maybe doesn't have a background in any grappling form, or doesn't have a background in dance. Usually somebody has something inside there that I can be like, okay, have you taken ballet before? It's like, oh yes, I did it when I was a little kid. I remember. It's like, okay, so you're gonna go to fifth position, and then you're going to releve, and then they look at me as like, oh, you know those terms? It's like, yes, I do. Like, I trained in dance, jazz, ballet, tap, you know. I went to university for theater. I'm very well accustomed to trying to relate things to people that have no experience with that, but I can relate in a different way.
Yeah.
And if I can make it make sense to that person in that way, because not everyone learns the same.
No, definitely not.
If you think about dance and choreography, some people learn to count. It's like it's a 1 2 3 4 2 2 3 4 3 2 3 4 4 2 3 4 change, right? And then so you learn based off the count of what moves to do, whether it's like a hitch step or a ball change or whatever it may be that you're doing through dance. And if I know a person has a dance background and they're getting into grappling for the first time, or they're getting into striking for the first time, I can relate it in that way.
Yeah.
Some people go by feeling, right? Or some people go by sound of the music that's going on. They don't precisely know that, okay, this is on the 4 beat, but they know that they have to do this when this part of the song hits or whatever.
Yeah.
So, there are different ways to teach and different ways to apply and different ways to help people understand, because again, not everyone learns the same way. And I've been in a situation where I've had instructors or teachers that have that are only good teachers in the way that they teach. And that's the best, most positive way that I can say that. I can say it in a much more negative way, but I'm trying to stay positive. But they're only good at teaching their specific way. And if I don't learn well in that way, well, I'm struggling now. And especially if I can't recognize why. Like, why don't I like this subject? Why don't I understand? I mean, I can't be the only one that doesn't understand. And I think there's a difference between cramming information in your brain just for a test and understanding. Yeah. And I would always want to understand why. And again, that's the mark of, I think, a good teacher, a good instructor, is being able to relate in a way to a student that doesn't learn the same way as somebody else does. And then you also have the difficult aspect of like the students on the spectrum of some sort.
Oh yeah.
Okay. They don't they don't depending upon the individual, of course, but sarcasm is not in their wheelhouse. So you can't be sarcastic, and because they'll take it very literally. And again, not every student, but not every person that's on the spectrum of some sort, and sometimes they learn to deal with that, or sometimes they really learn to understand, oh, you're being sarcastic right now. But again, they're serious with it, because it's like they recognize that there's sarcasm, but it doesn't relate the same way that it does to the larger group of individuals that easily access that.
So I think we have to back up.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. But I'm curious kind of how you got to where you are now, with the mindsets you have. And, I think we started getting there with growing up, but junior, senior year, you started kind of define your stride. Like football was one of your things that you found your place in, but then you had your other side of the arts. Going into university, what was your goals? What were your ambitions?
So, going to university, and that's sort of an interesting story too, because again, I wasn't necessarily academically gifted. I did okay in high school. I was a C student, solid C student, with the exception of art and theater for the most part.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I didn't get A's and B's in other subjects. I'm sure I know I did. But again, solid C student. So when the prospect of, I remember my junior and senior year, again, excelling in football. I remember there were a couple of like universities that I was looking at, and a couple of universities that came calling as well too. And then you have to go through the process of, checking out the academics. Is this a thing that I want to invest in? Is where I want to go to? Do I want to stay in state? Do I want to go out of state? What kind of grants can I get? What kind of, financial aid can I get? Because again, it's not like we were dirt poor, but we were, lower middle class family, and we were fine. Yeah. We were well off. But my parents did a great job. In retrospect, thinking about it, obviously it's frustrating at the time, but did a great job on educating me in the fact that I have to work for my own way. I wasn't going to get anything for free.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that I got for quote unquote free, which I think I still ended up paying some money on it, was I got a birthday present. I think it was either my senior year. I think it was my senior year. Senior year, I got my stepdad's old Chevy Cavalier, 92 Chevy Cavalier. That was my first car. And but again, I had to pay for my own insurance.
Yeah.
And at the time, that car was 12 years old. So it's not like it was worth a lot or anything. But I had to pay for my own insurance. I had to pay for, everything that involved, the upkeep of that vehicle. And again, it was a learning experience. You want to learn on something that you can sort of afford to be rough with. So they did a really good job at that. And same thing going to university. My mom was really great about helping me out with trying to find financial aid and going through that process. But I didn't want to go to university because I thought it was just going to be like more of high school.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And why it's like I like, ugh. And I hated the idea of having to owe money to somebody for something, and I knew I was going to have to take out loans because I wasn't going to get a scholarship for my scholarship.
Yeah.
I wasn't gifted in that way. And I learned later as well too that I can do those things and I can be good at those things, but I have to be engaged, and that was really dependent upon the teacher and the environment that I was in. And it just wasn't fostered in I think the best way for myself in high school. And so I didn't want to go because, well, I don't want to owe anybody a stupid large amount of money. And I thought it was just going to be a continuation of high school.
Okay.
But, and then it's like, well, what do I go for? Because again, football's calling, but also theater's calling. So anyway, and ended up deciding on NDSU. Ended up getting a couple scholarships from the theater department. But I remember even talking to the head of the departments, to backtrack a little bit, they would have these things called drama days.
Okay.
Where the NDSU theater department would invite students from across the state or states, whoever wants to come, in middle school and high school, to check out the department and the program. It was recruiting for them, and also we got to play a whole bunch of different theater games. Sort of see what classes were like at university and see a show. And I really enjoyed that experience, and so I ended up choosing to go the route of theater. When I even asked the couple of the higher ups in the department, teachers and instructors, if I would be able to also do football at the same time, and they basically told me that I had to choose one or the other. And yeah, and I was, I was a bigger boy, but I was on the smaller size for front linemen for
Yeah.
NDSU. At that time, I was like barely sort of cutting it, but now it's like when everyone's like 6'3", 6'5", it's like, yeah, I wouldn't. It'd be hard to sort of survive in that
For sure.
in that environment
Yeah.
and excel.
Yeah. No, I went to high school with an NDSU lineman, and he was the first person I ever got tackled by. His
really?
name's Jack Plankers. Nicest guy you'll ever meet.
Mm.
And he was just massive, though. I think he's at least 6'6". Huge family.
Yep.
Though, like, everybody's monsters.
Right, yeah.
And
They got good genes.
now he's a massive power lifter.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I would like you'd be small. Like earlier you're saying lineman, but I was like, oh, you seem like a running back.
Yeah.
That does seem like more like your size. But
Now
in high school,
you have to understand, in high school, I was my heaviest weight I think was like 245. Okay. And when I got at university, I was up at 270.
Okay.
Okay. And then not to jump ahead because we'll jump back, but and then after I graduated university and then I was working in the field a little bit, about 2 years after, I capped out at I was like 315.
Okay.
So that's the biggest I got. And a lot of it was fat, but I was also carrying a lot of muscle along with it.
What are you at
too.
right now?
Right now, I'm at about 225.
Okay. Yeah.
225. I sort of, if I just, eat my proper nutrition and do just sort of basic mobility exercise, I sort of settle around a 215. And this isn't like, bodybuilding, weightlifting.
Yeah.
I sort of settle around like a 210, 215.
Mm-hmm.
But if I add in cardiovascular exercise along with weightlifting, then I sort of like rest around the 220, 225.
So do you hold weight do you think like, so when you're continually exercising and lifting, do you think your body retains more weight? Because I always feel when I take like 4 days off, which is rare, but where I do like nothing for like 3-4 days, I lose probably about 5 to 6 pounds.
Oh, sure.
And I look a lot better.
Right.
But I definitely lose weight.
For sure. And a lot of that is water.
Yeah.
It's just water retention. But it's actually a good thing that you're giving your body that amount of rest because, depending upon your goals, whatever you want to do. But if it is muscle building, hypertrophy, bodybuilding, you want, like, rest is like one of the main keys to getting there. And a lot of people don't give that enough to themselves. And I'm guilty of it too. You know, I enjoy weightlifting. I enjoy being active. I enjoy, it's another reason why I enjoy jiu-jitsu is because it's using my body mechanics in a way that I don't do in everyday life.
Yeah. What you get forced into at jiu-jitsu or exercising in any way is completely outside your normal life.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And obviously I'm right now I only go twice a week. I'd like to go more. And because it is a thing that I do find very not only physically engaging but mentally engaging. And it works a lot of the different muscular system than if you say you just do compound movements.
Yeah.
Or if you do circuit training, or if you do HIIT training, or if you do, CrossFit, or if you do, it's just different, and
For sure.
And I just enjoy the physical aspect of that. Anything that I do, I enjoy being physical. I know that sounds, silly and like a Jane Fonda workout video or something like that. Let's get physical, but, but I really do. I think that's why I enjoyed football so much. That's why I think I enjoy theater so much, is because it challenges my body, it challenges my mind. I'll train when I'm doing theater or I'm working on film or something like that. I'll especially if I have time, I will train my body in a specific way that I think that character would exist.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because otherwise I think it would be disingenuous on a visual level to an audience to see, a person that looks like, 230 pounds of muscles, like 20 pounds of sausage in a 10-pound bag. It just doesn't quite look right if you're supposed to be a yoga instructor.
For sure.
Because not that there aren't those individuals that can, but generally speaking, that's a lot of lean muscle. That is using a whole bunch of deep tissue muscles. That's not the vanity muscles that we're, showing off. And I'll always try to do that, and the same thing now with the sort of training regimen that I'm doing, incorporating jiu-jitsu, incorporating taekwondo, incorporating yoga, incorporating cardio kickboxing HIIT training, incorporating weightlifting circuit training, incorporating powerlifting training, is all sort of going towards the individual that I am now and the goals that I'm reaching for currently, not only with my business in the martial arts, but my business in growing my product, me, for any future theater or film or music or pro wrestling gigs or whatever it may be. It's all I know that this vessel that I have is my product.
Yeah.
So I have to try to take care of it as best as I can. And the more we age, the more we have to change what those things are. Because we're only really given this vessel, this one body, and we have to work with what we have. And if your knees go out, well, yeah, you can get knee replacements, and that's a 6 to 8 month road back to sort of any sort of form of normalcy. Not that it can't be done; it absolutely can. Yeah. But like high performance athletes, we have shown that you can do that. It's tough, but it can be done. But knowing that, especially dealing with a lot of the grappling industry or the martial arts industry, there's a lot of lower back issues. There's a lot of knee issues. There's a lot of neck issues. And even just going through this last class, anytime we go through chokes and stuff like that, I mean, you're trying to get a blood choke, so you're hitting those carotid arteries, or you could get a tracheal choke, or you could get that neck crank that happens virtually at the same time. And especially if you don't take the time to warm up your necks beforehand, you end up walking out there just trying to hold your head up with your hand, because it's like, I remember one of my first classes in jiu-jitsu. White belt, no stripes, or I might have been one. But we were doing, we were rolling every day, and this is before 2020. So before they separated a whole bunch of things. But we were rolling every day, and formerly coach Matt, not Professor Matt. Yeah. Was a brown belt at the time, and he always had an interesting way of teaching and relating the material. But I remember we'd roll after, and one of my first classes it has to been like second week, something like that. And we were doing, neck cranks. And, I, found myself in a position where I wasn't in mount. He was in guard around me, and he had his right arm over my neck, and he was cranking down, and I was trying to pull it out, right? And he was trying to make me tap, and as you're supposed to do. And again, but second week, and they were still good about, tap first, don't be but there was still a little bit of a ego in there, and as there is with all of us. And I got out of it. I got my neck out of it, but I couldn't hold my head up for like the next like 2 weeks without it just hurting because I stretched those muscles out so badly.
Oof.
It's like going to like a headbanging concert where you constantly like rock your head, and if you're not used to that and you're just rocking those muscles back and forth,
sore.
oh my gosh, it was horrible. So then that was like I mean, that was a lesson, right? I mean, it could have turned into I'm not coming back to this thing anymore. But really what it turned into was like, okay, I'm going to tap. And I'm not going to be proud about it. I'm not that's not the way we said. I'm not going to have an ego about it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like as a white belt, you get smashed a lot. It's just the way of it.
Yeah, he also taught me a similar lesson. But just don't tap to just like basic pressure.
Right.
Yeah. And it was a test and I failed it the first time.
But we learned.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I forget why we went off on, why I went off on that tangent. But what was the question?
I couldn't tell you. I think we were talking about getting it. It went off.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a talker and I'll just walk around.
Let's kind of. I want to. So you ended up coming to NDSU?
Yes.
Doing theater?
Yes.
And what were those years like?
They were, university was fun. I pretty much lived on. Everyone was so dead set to get off campus as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. Because obviously people wanted to party or people wanted to drink or and I don't have anything against that as long as you're responsible and stuff like that, but that was never my bag. Mm-hmm. I was never like a big drinker and part of that is due to seeing how it affected some of the adults in my life and just really not wanting to turn into that and being scared that if I did try it, I would like it. And then, oh gosh, now I'm just going to turn into this jerk.
Yeah.
So it really I kept away from it for like the longest time. And I think like the first drink I ever really had was actually, I know it was like I was 22. And I was 22 and we were snowed in. No, I was 21 and we were snowed in at my dorm room. Mm-hmm. And so I had a birthday shot and it was like on my 21st birthday. I was like, okay. And it was Grey Goose, it was vodka, whatever. Yeah. And I just remember thinking, do I want another one? No. And so it just never really appealed to me. And I think the way that it did, and don't get me wrong, again, loving movies growing up, that was my jam. I would go to movies every week, maybe sometimes twice, or 3 times. It's like I collected movies. I had so many VHS, and then it turned into DVD, and then DVD turned into Blu-ray. I had so many of those things. Yeah. That was my investment. And again, I would always look at it as an investment because I'm an actor. I'm going to theater. This is study. It is entertainment, but this is study as well. Yeah. So yeah, I would but yeah, so drinking was never like a big thing to me. Again, I had nothing against it. It's like, as long as you're responsible, just be responsible, guys. And so everyone was like clamoring to get out of the dorm rooms, and I didn't mind it one bit. So I was in the dorms until my senior year. Okay. And some people were like really confused by that because like, don't you want an apartment or whatever by yourself? It's like, I'm here to go to school. I'd rather just wake up and walk to school than have to get a apartment somewhere off campus just so that I can, I don't know, like
do whatever.
Yeah. Right. And again, I'm here for education. That doesn't mean that I can't have fun. And that doesn't mean I didn't have fun. I went to house parties. I, hung out with friends. I used to hang out at other people's apartments and things like that. But, as far as like my abode or something like that, it's like, I don't need to impress anybody here. I'm just trying to go to school. Yeah. And it was much more convenient to be in the dorms. And again, wake up, walk to class, walk back. You know, if I lived off campus, I would have to be traveling back and forth all the time.
Yeah.
Spending way more money on gas, spending, you know, it just seemed more financially feasible to me, which is another reason why I didn't really get into drinking that much, because looking at the amount of liquor that it would take to actually make me feel buzzed was like, that is way too much money.
A lot of money.
It was a lot of money. And I actively one time, I think I was 23, because I used to play open mic nights as well too. After university. But I remember actively, like, people, and they knew too, they were like, they knew that I didn't drink, but, and they were cool with it. You know, it's, I'll have a water. Okay, cool. Thanks. And got used to seeing the same people inside of the music part of that business, and also the same bartenders and stuff. And they get used to it, but I would always try to, you know, give them some money at the end of the night, because I know they're not making any money off of me, because I'm not tipping them every time.
Yeah.
that they're bringing me a drink, because it's just water. But they knew, but I remember actively one time there were, like, I mean, everyone was trying to get me to drink something, and I said, you know what, let's try it. So I think I had something like, it was like five shots, 2 amaretto sours, like 3 tall beers or something like that, in the course of about an hour and a half.
Okay.
And I was barely buzzed.
You like that? Do you have that Viking gene in you?
It's partly that. Yes, I have a high tolerance. Yeah. And again, this is me when I was 300 pounds, or anywhere between 280 and 315. Yeah. So it takes more to actually do. But Viking gene, yeah. No, I'm my genetic coding, like, comes, like, straight from Germany. It's like Germans from Germany or Germans from Russia. Okay. So yeah, very not Scandinavian, but yeah. So not Viking proper, but just a little adjacent. Okay. Yeah. But so no, university was a fun experience. You know, I can, depending upon the day, sometimes I get frustrated because of the amount of money that I ended up having to invest in it, and the amount of time that it took to pay that back, which is a whole other conversation that we could have. But I think university was a good experience socially for me, and I got to hone my craft as well. I got to do perform in many different types of theater, play many different types of roles that I never would in you know, sort of in regular life, whether it be sort of a difference because of age or race, ethnicity, and we had some, you know, brilliant instructors from all over the world. Shashi, we ended up doing a ancient Indian Sanskrit play called Shakuntala, which was a wonderful experience. You know, Shashi came from India and taught us Indian theater. And so how many opportunities do you get, you know, even inside the theater world, do you get to do a culturally different form of theater? And I just found I just was so enthralled by that. And a couple of years later, after I graduated, they did some Japanese no theater as well too, which I was like, oh, I wish I could have been a part of that. And again, it's because I think I know I enjoy learning, and I know I enjoy culture, and I love to hear stories. I'm a storyteller. You know, that's the way that I can best sort of quickly describe me, is I'm a storyteller, whether it be with sports, whether it be with martial arts, whether it be with instructing, working on my own self, theater, music, writing. I like to engage with people. I like to make people think. I like to entertain, and vice versa. I like to be entertained. I like to learn new things. I like to learn about culture. I like to learn about history. I love history. That's one of the things that I really delve into when I get when I get really focused on something. It's not even necessarily the thing that's going on right now, but it's the how did we get to this?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll do a deep dive, and then and martial arts has always been one thing that I've always sort of gravitated towards.
So when did you ultimately get into martial arts? Or how did you?
So I remember taking a couple classes up in Grand Forks when I was like in the second grade.
Yeah.
And even when we stopped going there, because I only made it to like my first belt.
Is this Taekwondo?
Taekwondo, yep.
Okay.
I only made it to my first belt, and then we stopped going. I think for, a couple of reasons. One was, there's the monetary reason.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was a stay-at-home mom at the time, and she needed an after-school program for us to go to. So it was we were at the Y and learned through there. But I remember I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the the kicking aspect, the punching aspect, the athletic aspect of it. But only stayed into it for about a year or so, and then dropped out. And I'm a huge movie buff, so I'd end up watching just tons of martial arts films.
Yeah.
Tons. Like, I love Jackie Chan films, even like the ones that aren't very popular in the United States. Police Story is an amazing series of movies, especially the first three.
Mm-hmm.
Even some of the stuff that he came over and tried to, like, his first real attempts at being a Hollywood star, The Protector. Some people really didn't like that movie or didn't come across really well. His English wasn't as good as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
And it, but the deep dives that I do are like looking at the other individuals that are in these movies with them.
Oh, okay.
Not Joe Louis, but oh gosh, now I'm embarrassed because I can't remember his name. But he's still kicking and training. Superfoot System. I'll think about it here in a second. But he was the main, like, bad guy in the movie The Protector.
Okay.
And he had this awesome fight scene with Jackie Chan. And it was edited even better because they reshot it and cut it in China, because the way that they shot it in America was very safe and slow.
Interesting. Okay.
And then when they went over to China to re-film and cut it, they did it a lot faster. And like, there's a scene where he's got like a table saw that he's like just hurling at Jackie Chan. And then in the American version, he's just like very sort of slowly ducking underneath it. And it's like a good 2 feet away from like where he's swinging it. And then they could go and refilm it back in China. And Bill Wallace is just, he's aiming for his head, and Jackie gets just underneath it. And you watch those and it's just like, oh, I love this so much. But a huge martial arts, huge foreign film buff. Jackie Chan, Jet Li, Sammo Hung. Oh gosh, I could just go on.
And this was just growing up.
This is just growing up.
Okay.
Right. But again, and then all the other stuff happened with, and in some ways I was still like doing some of the basic stuff that I was doing in Taekwondo. Like, I was still like, kicking. That sounds funny. I was still kicking things. I was still punching things.
Yeah.
Usually air or targets, but never like, not a person. I wasn't like,
you weren't like sparring or anything.
No. Well, sparring a little bit, but not like street fighting. I wasn't going out and like starting fights.
Yeah.
So if my mom ever hears this, I never did that. And then we went through elementary school, middle school, high school, university, and then went through university, had a whole bunch of different, dance classes and things like that. And I could engage because it's movement based. And I ended up getting back into Taekwondo through my one of my best friends, Travis, who was a student at NDSU at the time. And I had graduated. I had gotten my degree, And then I was just going to work for a couple years in the area to try to make some money so that I could jump out to California or Chicago or New York. And in that time, he was still going to university and trying to finish up his degree. So and I actually ended up coming back and helping him with his thesis. He had to put together like a whole bunch of scenes for his capstone experience. Right. And I came back and I directed him for a couple of his things. And in the midst of that, he ended up inviting me to, hey, you should take some Taekwondo classes with me. We got a club on NDSU. And, I even remember thinking that, it's like, well, I took it when I was younger. And I remember that was always a thing that we could sort of connect on. It's like, oh, yeah, I did Taekwondo when I was younger. But he convinced me. So then we went out, and then we used to meet at the Benson Bunker Field House, is where the club would meet, and just started training there, and then eventually transferred over. Like once our instructor there, Mike Sinstelin, I ended up wanting to do other things. So then we ended up like taking over the club at the same time while moving over to getting our main training at the main gym in Fargo. On Main Avenue.
Is it the same gym?
Yes.
You still working at now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I've been associated or affiliated with them for quite a while. Had a sabbatical, a bit of a break in there for about 8 years, but that comes a little bit later. But always stayed, in touch.
Yeah.
Type of thing. But started training there. And just working with my friend Travis, meeting a whole bunch of people through there, getting into the sparring, getting into the competition aspects of things, really trying to understand the sport beyond the martial art itself. Because in each forms of martial arts, there's always like some sort of sport aspect to it. Jiu-jitsu, judo, karate, taekwondo. There's always like the traditional aspect of it. And then there's the sport aspect of it. And a lot of times it's really funny too, because, I'm trying to think. Yeah, jiu-jitsu actually, I think does a really good job, at least from my experience with where we train, does a really good job at giving you different aspects of utilizing grappling. They'll do a self-defense aspect to it. They'll do strict jiu-jitsu aspect to it. They'll do street fighting aspect to it, and virtually the stuff that we roll to and we train for is stuff that you can use in sport competition. With Taekwondo, it's changed a little bit in the past 15, 20 years.
So you've seen the evolution.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Taekwondo sparring in the 90s, especially the 90s, was just, and late 80s too, was just awesome to watch. It's just like these guys were flying through the air and just kicking each other, 360 backspins, 540 back kicks. It became, or was an exhibition sport at the 1988 Olympics, and then was put on the card, I believe, at the 92 Olympics was the first time that it had a sport competition for Taekwondo, and it's still inside the Olympics today. But the evolution of the way that it's sort of turned is, some people, a lot of the people who were in the midst of it at the time in the 80s and the 90s, they'll complain about the way the sport has turned today, because a lot of it is changed, sort of due to sort of partly the fighting style and the way that the points are tallied and scored. So back in the day, you would see a lot of back leg roundhouses or doubles or triples. Nowadays, it's changed so vastly that it's a lot of front leg cut kicks, side kicks,
Okay.
to maintain distance between you and your partner. So to sort of, or the person you're against. So in some ways, it's actually turned into more of what is akin to fencing.
Okay.
With your legs.
Yeah.
Than it is. And I'll show you some video after this, but it's like I'll show you some Taekwondo sparring from the 80s and 90s compared to today. It's just different. Whether you like it or you don't, it's just different.
Well, I think like George talked through when I had our podcast with him. He's seen the evolution of when he first started training, the classes were you try to beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
And it was
and that was part of Taekwondo as well too. You would show up and you would like, I wouldn't say you would try to beat up the new people that show up and see who stays, but that was definitely a mentality. What's that?
You want to test them.
Yeah, you want to test them, right?
Yeah.
Because like, do you really want to be here, or you just think that this is a cool thing to I do Taekwondo or I do Jiu-Jitsu. It's like, how much do you really want to be here? And that's sort of the test. And if you can go through the rigors of sort of everyone just tossing you around for however long, then they're like, okay, you're cool. Let's go now. Let's actually train. And that's an old school mentality all the way across the board. I don't think that it's like one focus driven. That's the way that a lot of those old masters, old instructors used to teach, and some still do. And I guess depending upon the individual, I'll get more of a rapport with someone first to sort of understand where their boundaries are at, and then if I can push them in that way, I will. But if I see that that's not the best teaching or learning approach for this individual, then I won't go that way. So and that's how it's like, I mean, you have 30 people show up to a class, but by the end of the second week, there's only 10 people there. By the end of the first month, there's only 5 people there. Yeah. And then you start looking at it from a business aspect, and it's like, oh man, it's not really great for business.
It doesn't keep the lights on.
No, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like most of us that are working inside of any specialized industry, whether it be weightlifting, CrossFit, HIIT training, any type of specialty gym or martial arts gym, most of it is just trying to keep the lights on. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, and it's very personality driven as well too. I've been to some horrible Taekwondo gyms. I mean, just as far as like they don't cultivate a positive attitude and good structure. And same thing for other disciplines, karate, jiu-jitsu, judo. I've trained with a bunch of people that are, or how do I better say, I've been involved in classes or structures that aren't the most conducive to not only learning, but you can almost tell that this person doesn't quite even understand what they're trying to teach. Okay. And that's another conversation, but it is frustrating because, or they're just mean about it, and it's like, hey, I'm paying you money to be here right now. It's like, yeah, you are. It's like, okay, see ya. It's it's not. I think there's a healthy way to do that. And I think that there's an unhealthy way to do that. Yeah, I agree. And I think, George has really done a great job of cultivating that type of culture. And I completely agree with that. I mean, it's like, we want to push each other. We don't want to drive each other away. And there's a healthy balance, I think. Yeah. If you were to go to Fargo BJJ at 10 o'clock this morning, you'd have seen a group of people getting after it and training very hard. Absolutely. And that's like Jason's group right now, if you know Jason. Yes. Yeah. And they train really hard, I think, in the morning over at his gym. Right. And then I know Sunday mornings they train really hard.
and they go for like 4.5 hours.
Wow.
So
Good on them. That's awesome. That's endurance.
yeah,
Shoot.
they go hard, but I think it's a then you come Monday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
It's a lot more relaxed
Yeah.
environment for sure, and then it gets stepped up a little bit in technique if you stay for the next hour. But
Right. No, and that's that's the conundrum that I find myself in, is that there's only so much time in the day.
yes,
And I would love if I had more time to do it, but currently my schedule, I'm either training people at our gym,
mm-hmm.
I'm training Taekwondo, and like my Mondays and Wednesdays are like my busiest days.
Yeah,
So I'm like active and working and being active and training other people as well as training myself, throughout those Monday, Wednesdays. So I'm going from 7, 8 in the morning on Monday, Wednesday until 10:30, 11 o'clock at night.
are you going to train after you leave BJJ?
Yes.
So is that for yourself or is that training others?
Both, actually.
Okay.
So I'll usually get my lift in the morning, amongst when I train. I'll train people around that. Like if I'm training somebody, I'm not going to get a lift in. I'm going to focus on them.
Yeah.
And then if there's a downtime, then I'll train myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'll get that in. Sometimes I'll get some, usually it's weightlifting, cardio, some mobility work. And then I'll run off and teach a couple classes out in Barnesville for an after-school program that they have out there. And again, a lot of Taekwondo too, especially at that age.
Mm-hmm.
You're just trying to get them to understand rules.
Yeah.
And to understand consequence. And do it in a safe manner, where I don't know that they get it a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
So, discipline, things like that. And as well as, working on their body mechanics, all the cool stuff, kicking.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's that extra element when you're dealing with younger students,
Mm-hmm.
And you're really, and in some ways that's almost like more important than the physical aspect of what you're doing with whatever art form you're trying to help employ, is you're trying to help. It's like mental jiu-jitsu, or it's mental Taekwondo. You're trying to help these individuals grow at such a young early age and understand that it's okay to fail. Like a lot of these kids, they're just so afraid to fail. And it's like, it's okay to fail. Like you learn from failure. You don't, like, if you fail, the answer isn't quit. If you fail, the answer is, what can I do better so that maybe I won't fail next time?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's, and if you can get that instilled within a young mind, man, you're just setting them up for success for the rest of their lives.
Do you think that martial arts puts a kid into that mindset?
Yes.
Pretty easily.
Well, I'll say with the right culture and instructor.
In like
yes.
the correct environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think that comes down to, in martial arts in general, on a business aspect, is a personality driven business.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a great instructor and he's amazing at what he teaches, and he's a great example to those students, you'll have students for life.
Yeah.
They'll follow you wherever you go. And not in like, and there are some instances where, some industries or some gyms are a bit brainwashy, or can be.
Okay.
But that's not that. I'm not talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
But like where you actually, genuinely, you can tell that the instructor is doing their best to help your child or your student out, or even you out in the process. Because especially when they're that young and you're teaching them at that young of level, the parent having them involved with the process that student is going through is also a huge thing.
Okay.
It's huge. You want to get the parents involved, not even necessarily get them on the floor and get them, doing whatever drills that you're doing. That can be it. Sure, absolutely. Sometimes their child needs that to help them with that, and that also helps the parent understand what exactly they're going through.
Yeah.
But also to let the student know that their parent is there for them, and it makes it more of a bonding experience as well too. Yeah, but that's anyway, going off on another tangent.
No, that's good.
But yes, no, I think that under the right circumstances, yes, martial arts teaches you so many things beyond what I think what is sort of visible on the surface, which is, you're learning how to fight. That's what a lot of people sort of think that it is. It's like, no, most of it is you're learning how to defend yourself. Like
that's for sure what we learn.
Yeah.
In the fundamental jiu-jitsu.
And there are some practitioners that don't follow that mindset. They're just like, let's just go in and smash every day. And again, that doesn't always lead to a good culture, let alone one that is, profitable if you're trying to be a business. But yes, with the right circumstance, martial arts teaches you discipline, confidence,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and respect.
Yeah.
And learning those things in a positive way. And, where it's not like I'm forced to respect you. I want to respect you. And vice versa. I want you to respect me. And then that comes down to as well. It's like, you want what's best for your students, and you want to try to cultivate the best thing that helps them grow, not as a fighter, but as an individual. I train to fight, like sometimes, I train to fight so that I don't have to.
Yeah.
Right. It's that whole idea of I'd rather be a warrior in a garden
than a gardener in a war.
Than a gardener in a war. Yes, absolutely. Because again, I train to defend myself. I train to fight so that I don't have to. If I have to pull that out, and it's always last scenario for me.
Yeah.
I will. I've worked as bodyguards. I've worked as security before. I've always, with the exception of one time, I've always been able to talk down somebody who was raging. With the exception of one time. One time, the guy, he was on something, and that's the tough thing too.
Yeah.
Is like, oh shoot, is this just regular rage? Usually heightened by alcohol, or is this you're on something else that's literally messing up the chemistry of your brain, and so you're not seeing things the way the rest of us are seeing them. And he was raging, and he was fighting this other security guard that was on duty at the time. And so, and I was DJing at the time, actually, in the bar that I was at. And I ended up seeing this interaction go on. And so I put my DJ on autoplay, so it just skipped the next song. So it was like, and then I went down to assist, right? So first of all, called in, the other security, hey, we have something going on inside the bar. And then went down to assist, and dude's like raging, about to swing on him. I was like, sir, please calm down. Sir, please calm down. And he was just, throwing some just nasty language and epithets at him as well too. And sir, calm down. Sir, calm down. And he kept focusing on this one guy. So I don't know if this guy said something that just did not agree with the patron, but and the security guard was a little bit smaller than this guy, but this guy was just wiry. And then I just kept explaining to him, sir, please calm down. Didn't put hands on him, just hands right here, hands at your chest. It's like, sir, please calm down. If you don't calm down, sir, I'll have to ask you to leave. Sir, please calm down. Sir, just very calmly. And then he and then you see like his neck muscles just because he's about to swing. And it's like, sir, please don't do this. And then he ended up like trying to throw like a haymaker or something like that. And I just got in tight on him, wrapped him around, swept him down to the ground. And then I'm laying down in an arm bar on him. And I just tell the security guard over here, go get the police, go get help. And I just I'm not cranking him, but I'm holding him in place. My legs wrapped around his neck. I'm just holding him in this arm bar. And then all of a sudden, like he's trying to squirm out, and the entire time, sir, please calm down. Sir, please calm down. And he's trying to squirm out, but I got him locked in, hooked really hard, tightly, but then he starts going for like some more street moves, which is, what's the one thing that's by his head right now? My leg. What's the one thing that he can use with his head? His teeth. So he starts to, I feel his mouth like opening up, like trying to bite my calf. And it's like, sir, please don't do that. And then I feel him start going in that. And then I just do a little kick. And then just jostle him. It's like, sir, please don't. Like the entire time. It was comical. But I'm laying there. Meanwhile, there's 100 people standing around because we're on the dance floor. And
is this like downtown?
This was at the Hub.
The Hub? Okay.
Yeah, back when the Hub was rolling. And most of the fights honestly broke out in the venue side, more the music that's on.
It's been like side. Playmakers?
It's Playmakers, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And so the venue, Playmakers, so there was the Monkey Bar upstairs.
Yeah.
But we were in the Cadillac Ranch, the country bar.
Okay.
Which mostly was, again, everyone was pretty chill there for the most part. This guy didn't look like a country fan.
Yeah.
So I don't know how he got in there, but I was like, whatever. But anyway, I'm holding this guy in this arm bar. And he's trying to bite my leg, and I'm just shaking him off. Like, don't do that, sir. Please don't do that. And every time he would like try to do it again, I'd either crank a little bit more on his arm, or I'd like shake my leg around. Again, not maliciously, not to try to hurt him, actually to protect him.
Yeah.
From hurting himself or hurting someone else. But again, he was raging on something. Not sure what that thing was. Wasn't alcohol. It was something else.
Yeah.
And just waited there. For about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, just holding him and breathing. Sir, please calm down. This isn't going to work for you. And then finally, like 2-3 other security guards came in, and then police showed up and then escorted them out and things like that. But with the exception of that instance, and there have been a couple other, but with the exception of that instance, I've been able to, you can talk down people from a fight.
Yeah.
A lot of times they don't want to fight. I remember specifically this one individual. He was just overly drunk, overly intoxicated, and he was told that he had to go home. Well, you hear that, you have to understand when a person's drunk too, they go down to like a 5-year-old.
Yeah. So
you have to start talking to him like a 5-year-old now. It's like, sir, I think we just need to go home. I don't think that. And he's picking up his fist. It's like, well, if you want to fight, let's fight. It's like, sir, you don't want to fight me, do you? And he's like, no. He's like, can I get you a cab? Can I call you a cab? Yeah. It's like, okay, let's go get a cab, sir. And I think that's just, and that's tough too, because, there are those, testosterone male tendencies that it's like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
But, at the very end of the day, this guy he's just going through something. I don't know what that is. I don't have to know what that is, but he's gotten himself into a state where he is right now. And how does that help me to just, bring him down to the ground really hard and mess him up in the process when he's just maybe having a bad day? And if I can get him home safe, what's wrong with that? That's you got to be there's a more gentle way, But again, being's like, if I need to use the things that I've learned, I can. I don't want to.
Yeah.
But
obviously, yeah.
Warrior in a garden, gardener in war.
Yeah. So right now, like you're in a few different roles of training.
Yes.
What are you shooting for? Or do you really like where you're at?
I'm always about growth. Do I like where I'm at? That's like a philosophical question. That's always, I think, one that drives me. In that, I always I'm a student of life.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes that comes across as being like hippy dippy or something like
I,
that.
I think I completely understand where you're
Right.
coming from.
Right. But I enjoy learning, and I enjoy pushing myself.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy teaching, and I enjoy furthering that education and helping other minds grow in the process of that.
Yeah.
So with like Taekwondo, I've been teaching that actively for, back into it was 2016.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say, when one of my master instructors called me back up, and I guess they had an opening out in Barnesville, and they wanted to see if I was able to come and instruct again.
Mm-hmm.
And that was difficult at the time. Funny, because I actually started taking jiu-jitsu at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I don't want to sacrifice this one thing to go do the other. And also I have a full-time job that I was doing at the time, which was the director of operations for a specialized labor company that works in event staffing and stage labor setup for national tours and concerts from all over the world. So that's the long title of it.
Mm-hmm.
The short title of it is I would find people to help assist in facilitating concerts and live events. And I was deep in the thick of that as well. I was working as an actor in the area for about 4 or 5 years post university, and I wanted to be involved in the industry in some way, shape, or form. And the few times that I had attempted to move to a more metropolitan area to further my acting career, life always has a tendency of getting in the way of when you try to make plans, right?
Yeah.
And a couple of those opportunities came and went. Not due to my fault or anything like that. It was just sort of the way that it went.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to be involved in the entertainment industry. And so I thought that this was a way that I could do that sort of tangentially. When it came down to it, it sort of is, but it's mostly just your middle management. You're working in management. And it was a wonderful experience as well, too, working for that company, building that company, growing that company. And got to meet a lot of people from all over the world. Got to hang out with a bunch of celebrities from all over the world. Really, really cool. Really, really down to earth people. There are a few individuals that turn out to be like, oh, wish I just wouldn't have met you.
Yeah.
But overall, for the most part, everyone's pretty chill and cool. They're people. They're just people with lots of money, or lots of people that are behind them trying to make money. And I was doing that full time. But I sort of got to a point where I was like making my own hours because I was getting my work done.
Yeah.
And so I had a conversation with my boss, the owner, and said, "Hey, I just got this opportunity to go back and start teaching again, as long as it does not conflict with my workload. Can we try this out for the next 3 months and see if it works? If it doesn't work, I'll drop it and I'll stay with you."
Yeah.
And he was like, "No, that seems fair. Cool." So again, did it over the next 3 months. It didn't conflict with my work. Still got my work done. Still got everyone to the Greek. Still got everything that needed to be done, I was able to accomplish and still teach. You know, and luckily in this day and age, you know, your phone goes everywhere with you. So I could, you know, virtually work from wherever. And this is, again, prior to 2020, where it sort of has become the norm, where people work from home or people work from wherever. So, and that's when I started, you know, reteaching. That's when I started teaching again. And then I was taking jiu-jitsu. And then again, work got busy because we're way more busy in the summer than we are in the winters, obviously, just because it's difficult for tourists to travel up here based upon the weather. And then that's when I had to take a break from jiu-jitsu. I think it was like a process of like 4 months too that I ended up paying but never going. And I kept reaching out and being like, hey, I keep trying to make this, George. Can we make this? I'm trying to make, and he's like, okay, give me your schedule, see if we can figure something. And I told him my schedule. I was like, wow, you really are busy. And I'm like, yeah, like I'm not making excuses. It's like, I wish I could. But and then had to just, you know, put that off on hold, put that on the back burner for a little bit. Knowing that, you know, I wanted to come back and I want to continue my studying and I want to continue those goals. I mean, everyone's like, well, what's the ultimate goal? And sometimes people are like, black belt. You know, again, I think that's just the process by which the things that you go through to get there. And with any journey, it just comes with time. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I think, you know, most of us are goal oriented. So you just like, oh, I want to get that black belt, or I want to get, you know, I think it's much more healthy for a person to be like, I want to get that next stripe with jiu-jitsu anyway. And not to like ask for it. It's like, when am I getting my next stripe? When I get my and I hear that from my students a lot too. It's like, well, when am I gonna? It's like, when you can show me that you understand what the material is trying to teach you. But if you make those little goals, I think most people are like, okay, I want to make it to my blue belt. Okay, I want to make it to my purple. Okay, I want to make it to the brown. I want to make it to black. Or I just want to compete. Or I just want to feel healthier. You know, I think those are, you know, goals that people go after and are completely obtainable goals. And while those things, I would lie if I would say that they're not in my brain somewhere. You know, because I think we all have that lizard brain in the back of us that just like triggers. And it's like, I have to get this by this amount of time because I'm running out of time. You know, or, you know, however we sort of make that up in our brains that we're out of time. And we're not. You just have to go through the process. So I'm not like concerned about when am I going to get my whatever belt. I just want to know that I understand the material.
I'm right there with you. I think it'd be a lie to say that I wouldn't like to get belt promotions, obviously. But I have since the beginning stuck with the idea that I know nothing, and I'm gonna come there and I'm gonna learn, and that's gonna be the highlight. And if something else happens, that's cool. And I think I've seen other students in the school ask, like, after, like, what I have seen be like their second or third day, be like, so when do I get promoted? Especially if they're on their first day, and somebody gets promoted, and they see that happen on their first day,
right? Because it's like, oh,
that's the norm.
How do we get there? Yeah.
And so, I think it's fascinating, but I just don't. I think some people don't realize how long it takes.
Precisely.
Yeah.
No, absolutely, and that's the fun thing about, you know, the different training or martial arts systems as well too. Is everyone's a little bit different. To get a black belt in one discipline is a different time length than to get a black belt in another discipline. And, you know, there's all those, you know, inspirational sort of meditational sayings. A black belt is a white belt that never gave up, or whatever you want to put against it, or black belt is only the beginning, of the journey. And I truly believe those things, because when I received my first degree black belt in Taekwondo, it was like back at zero. It's like I feel like I know nothing.
Yeah.
Because
whoever gave it to you is still that much smarter than you.
Oh no, 100%.
Yeah.
And they've got way more experience, and they've and I admire that. And you're you'll only be as good as how much you push yourself and how much the other person pushes you. So, I mean, which is why oftentimes it's like you'll want to train with somebody who's better than you.
Yeah.
Because then
absolutely.
it shows you the things that you need to work on. Right. And you feel like you're getting smashed all the time, or you feel like, God, I just can't get this thing down. Right. Well, keep practicing it. Hey, keep trying it. Try it this way. Okay. That you're having a tough time with that. Try this. See how that works. Oh, that works really well. Okay. Now you have to unlearn the way you were doing it for the past 3 years.
Yeah.
And now try to incorporate that. So drill this, do that, right? And then you make better habits. And everyone's a little bit different as well, too. My body is not what you would classically consider a person in Taekwondo. Like, most of these people are really tall, really slender. And I'm, 6 foot, maybe 6'1" on a good day.
On a good day.
On a good day, when the earth isn't pulling me down.
Yeah.
And they got legs for miles, And when you think about like the sport aspect of Taekwondo too, it's like, okay, well, headshots and sports sparring are that's how you gain the most points. And if you had a turning move to it as well, you get even more points. So if you have, so my weight class, in sparring, it's like oftentimes I'm going against guys that are like 6'5", 6'6", and it's like, there's no way that even if I do like the splits and do a roundhouse kick to this guy's head, there's no way I'm going to hit that.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't have the range. So I have to spar in a different way than those people who are gifted with that sort of long, slender bodies are. They have to work in a different way than I do.
Makes sense.
I'm a little bit more of I wouldn't call it a bull rusher, but I like to get in close, and drive that way. But yeah, it's the martial arts has always been good to me. Not only the physical aspect of it, but the mental and the sort of the meditative aspect to it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too. Coming to jiu-jitsu, I spent a good amount of time, being an instructor. It's like I just want to be a student again. And because again, I love learning. I love entertaining.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, I'm an actor. I've done voice work, I've done theater, I've done film, I've done, and multiple styles in every form of those as well. And I want to continue to do that. This isn't the right place to do it because there isn't really a film or theater industry unless you want to do things on the community level, which you absolutely can. There's some really, really fabulous people to work with around here. But to make a living off of it you can't really do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Even if you can't really do it. Not on just like a singular basis. Like, you're not just an actor anymore. You have to run the theater and be an actor. You have to, be actor, producer, director. You have to work in makeup, and that's a good thing about, university. I got a really good education as far as like the different aspects of things that go around in that industry as well. So makeup work, lighting, audio, carpentry, everything, everything. It was, they'd like to throw me at carpentry a lot because I was, a bigger dude. But like, don't stereotype. What's going on, guys?
You're like, I want to do the fancy art.
I want to do the light stuff too. Can I do light stuff? Can I just play with lights for a little bit? But yeah. So it's that aspect has always been a part of me, and then most recently it's like, and I'm always, I sometimes feel like I don't want to say spread myself thin, but I do stay active.
Yeah.
Like all the time.
I think it's very important. I would, you talked about Monday or Wednesday being your busiest days.
Yeah.
Same for me, like ideally I'm up at 4:30 reading for like an hour.
Nice.
And then going to run.
I noticed that when you texted me, it was like 5 a.m. I was like, dang, dude.
I was like, this might be a little early to text him, but
rise and shine. But that's good though.
Yeah.
It's like, I need to be better about, I want to try to be one of those wake up early people. And I have been, when I was working in the entertainment industry, on the staffing basis, the labor basis.
Mm-hmm.
There were I would wake up at 3 a.m. to be in the car by 4 because I'd have to be up to Grand Forks by 5, and then to get things ready by 5:30, start the shift at 6, and then they'd work their 4-5 hours in the morning, get that done. A couple more people would stay on all day, which would go until like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Then they're ready to start the show up at 6. The doors open at 5. They're starting to show up at 6. So I need eight hands that are by the stage, ready to pull anything off stage. And then by the end of the night, make sure that the rest of the crew, the local crew, shows up to jump back on to tear it all down so they can get off to their next track. And we wouldn't get done until 2 a.m. And then I still have an hour to drive back to get to Fargo by 3 and maybe get to bed by 4. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've pulled a 24-hour shift, like literally, and like no rest, no downtime in between. I mean, I got to sit down a few times and I got to eat, but it wasn't like, give me 30 minutes in a room by myself in some dark space just so I can just calm my brain, right?
Yeah.
So, and I can't tell you how many times I did that. And I existed like that for like 6 years. And so I can be a morning person. I can be. But
gotta get on that.
Prefer.
Yeah.
But
if you don't have to be, you don't. It's like, it's not ideal.
Right.
I'd rather wake up at 7.
Yeah, it's a good.
Which isn't
number.
like that late, but
no.
If I want to read and run before I go to work, it's hard.
Oh no, and I applaud you for honestly, truly, for doing that, because I think a lot of people don't. They're just like, I'm just gonna wake up late, and then, we spend a third of our lives sleeping. Don't get me wrong, rest is important. I mean, as a weightlifter, rest is important. But you shouldn't sacrifice the things that open yourself up intellectually and mentally, spiritually, for those in the process. So I applaud you for.
I think like rest is important 100%, and there's certain times where like I'll be like, oh, I've gone too far this week. I've done too many things. I'm gonna sleep in today.
Yeah,
and I feel so recharged after that. But I'm not a professional athlete. I'm not a professional anything. And so like I only do the things I do because I enjoy them,
right? And
so as long as I make it to work at 8 to 4 and I pay my bills, that's fine. Right. Everything on top of it is like icing on the cake.
100%.
So
100%. Yeah, I mean, Mondays and Wednesdays are just balls to the wall the entire day. So up at it was up by 6 or 7, work by 7 or 8, train, run out to Barnesville, teach, run back to Fargo Jiu-Jitsu, run back to the gym, train, then teach another Taekwondo class, and then train and teach in pro wrestling. And that's one of my more recent, I suppose, activities in my later part of my life.
Adventures.
But yeah, so do a lot of that too. So it's a lot of it's being.
Do you find yourself trying to struggle at trying to be 100% at one place?
Sometimes.
Okay.
But it's being very structured. I think that's what I was looking for.
Okay.
It's like, if I can stay on point on structure, I'm good. But that doesn't leave me a lot of wiggle room.
No.
Like I mean, so that's sometimes why when I show up to jiu-jitsu, like I get there just on time, or sometimes it's like a few minutes late, and I hate showing up late. That's like the worst thing that I hate about doing, you know? And I know some things are out of my control, but in my brain, my initial response is, if I can't be there on time, I'm just going to skip it. But I've come to fight that response by saying, no, if I'm going to be there as soon as I can. Again, everyone's supportive there. It's not like that, but I'm going to be there as soon as I can. And if I am late, I'm not going to get the mentality of I'm just not going to show up, even though that's what I like. The inner part of me wants to do is like, no, I don't want to interrupt class. I don't want to show up late. I don't want to be that student. But we all have lives.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
And it's a much more positive attitude to be like, no, get here, as soon as you can, and then jump on the floor. It's totally cool. And that is, fostered a much more positive mind state. But also, it's a thought experiment, right? Mm-hmm. It's like I'm pushing myself through an initial discomfort of I don't want to show up late, so I'm just not going to show up, into I don't want to show up late, but if I am, I'm still going to go because I still can learn. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens. I come directly from Barnesville, like straight to jiu-jitsu. And and then after I get done with jiu-jitsu, then I run over to the gym and train some people in circuit training, and then do a Taekwondo class, and then
that's crazy.
Do pro wrestling, and then done by 10:30 at night. And that's not including, trying to schedule, wrestling shows or jiu-jitsu seminars or Taekwondo seminars, and trying to be part of all those things too, and trying not to double book myself, as it were.
Well, I think we're at like 2.5 hours.
Oh my gosh.
So in order to like give you your afternoon a little bit more,
I'm a talker, dude. I'm a talker, brother.
It's okay. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate you talking on the podcast.
Yeah.
But if there's anything you want to share before you head out, go ahead. But beyond that, I think we could wrap it up here. And I'll definitely want to have you back on.
Oh, for sure. Right on, brother. Anything to be said? Let's see. If you want to see some good pro wrestling, follow Jake Taylor on Facebook. Gonna be working all the way across the Midwest, North Dakota, Minnesota, Montana. Got a couple shows coming up. I suppose one of the biggest things that I like to impart, or the biggest things that I keep driving for, is that, everyone that's out there, you can push yourself past your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And if you do that enough, you will surprise yourself at what you are capable of doing in whatever aspect that is, whether it's a discipline in activity, weightlifting, whether it's a discipline, a martial arts discipline. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, I completely agree.
The more you do that, the more you're able to approach and attack life in a positive mindset.
I think that's a great way to end.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the What's Your Why podcast. Taylor, thank you for coming on if you got this far. It was an awesome episode to record, and I really look forward to doing the next one with Taylor. But in news for the podcast, check out the shirts online on the Instagram. They're also on YouTube. But here, if you're watching the YouTube, here's a preview of the shirts. Front, back. I would be wearing mine right now, but I just worked out and it's all nasty. I showered. But you guys check them out. They'll be for sale on Thursday, and you can just Venmo me for those. But appreciate you guys. Come back for more. Thank you.